This is TMI coming to you live from our Lagos Network studios, and of course a continuation of the program this morning. My name once again is Joshua Okata, and of course we will be looking at a major food crisis hitting the agricultural sector, and of course that brings us to the staggering figure released just recently by the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security in the person of Abubakar Kyari, who said that Nigeria lost to the tune of over 1.3 billion naira to tomato Ebola. What exactly is tomato Ebola, you might ask? Well, it's a pest actually that destroys agricultural produce in 24 hours. As we speak currently, 3 states, have been affected. I'm talking about Kano, Katsina, and of course, the other states, which I'll be mentioning shortly in the course of this discussion. But for the purpose of our discussion, we'll be looking at interventive measures that government, especially in the agricultural sector, could put in place to be able to reduce the effect this would have if it actually spread to other states, which, as we have it today, is a national reserve. And of course, to have this conversation with me this morning is our guest in the person of Mr. Ayo Emakume. He is a management consultant and, of course, an economist. Good morning, Mr. Ayo, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Josh. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. Now, looking at the situation of things, the agricultural minister in the person of Abubakar has just released a staggering figure to the tune of 1.3 billion naira. That's quite a huge, loss for us as Nigerians. But to a large extent, most Nigerians do not understand what this means in terms of our loss, especially when they don't see it affecting directly on their lives. But by the time they go to the market, for instance, and they buy some food commodities, and they get to see that the prices have hiked, say from 5,000 to 10,000 or even 30,000 as we have it today, especially with regards to buying a 50 kilogram basket of tomato. They get to see the impact it's having. But what's your take as regards that, looking at the loss that we've just incurred to tomato Ebola?
Okay, thank you. First of all, 1.3 billion is minor compared to the losses we've been having in the tomato market. So we've always been incurring a lot of losses, and if I can expatiate on that, is that the average, the tomato industry in Nigeria is valued at about 1.6 trillion naira. But by the time it gets to the market, is about 800 billion. So we've already lost 800 billion, which is the regular occurrence that has not been addressed. So 800 billion and 1.3 billion. But the sad part, which is the part that saddens me, is that this thing is happening in 4 states actually. Kano, Kaduna, Jigawa, Katsina. And some farmers have lost their entire, that's 100% loss, farm produce. So based on that, it now goes back to the need that has been in the cooler since of agricultural insurance. Agricultural insurance does not work in Nigeria, but it is simply because the structure has not been set up and enacted effectively. So it brings that up. Then so based on what I'm saying now, you see that 1.3 billion is far less than 800 billion loss we've been having every year in the last how many years, which is the emergency that needs to be addressed. Not the 1. Yes, the 1.3 billion is the fact that, of course, the minister already said they are working on getting resistant species. So, which IITA has been wonderful, because when situations like this come up, they step up, and I'm sure in the next 6 months we will have a resistant species. and that will take care of that. They've always been so effective in doing that with so many things they've come up with. But the challenge is that part of the major. We usually lose a minimum of 45% of our tomato farm produce every year. And why is it that it's just once or twice in a year that we harvest tomato? We actually can harvest tomato every month or every quarter. Those are issues that needs to be addressed, because when you look at it, if presently the industry is 1.6 trillion and is only operating at 800 billion, that means we are losing 800 billion every year. And then it can be increased times 5 by ensuring that we have species that is harvested every quarter, which means that every quarter we have tomato. And then storage is another issue, which is why we can't even address that part. We don't have storage facilities for tomato, which is why most times once the farmers produce, they need to urgently take it to the market. Otherwise, they go bad. And once that happens, they lose, because usually between the north and here in the southwest, for example, that's about 2 days to 3 days, and tomato shelf life as fresh is between that 2 and 3 days. So by the time it gets here, they are selling it at a loss, which is why it seems so expensive, but from their end it's cheap that we are getting it. So those are issues that needs to be addressed. Yes, now the 1.3 billion affects us in terms of losses, because those are the few states now that are producing tomato because of the insecurity in the food basket. So because of those few states, and many of the farmers are now losing the little tomato they have, and most of them, which is the other issue, most of them are peasant farmers. They are not producing tomato on an industrial scale. So as they are not producing on an industrial scale, this loss will have an effect. But the beauty of it, when I look at the market generally, it shouldn't be more than 10-20%, although that's a ripple effect which will have an effect on inflation, but a 10-20% extra. So it is for government to now address the key issues, which are: 1, insecurity; 2, yes, they are working on it, but they need to do more in terms of infrastructure, transportation, to get this tomato to where they are needed on time. But the central factor, sir, are 2 things: 1, storage; 2, what are you calling it, volume. If those 2 are taken care of, it will crash the prices and it will increase revenue for all parties. All parties will be happy, all stakeholders. So.
Yeah, while we're yet to look at, why some states like Benue, Plateau cannot be able to produce that much in terms of volume, is something you just addressed a while ago, which is insecurity. What could be done to be able to mitigate it right now, especially considering the fact that 3 states are down, and what measures do you think could be put in place, both in the immediate, mid, and long-term basis, while we're yet to fix the major problem, which is insecurity? What do you think could be done?
Well, first of all, it's not the entire state. It's just some entire farm. Like I told you, the size of the market, it is a few farms that lost all of their, and in some cases, most of their produce. There are still a lot of farmers there with enough produce to cover up for the losses. So what needs to be done in the immediate is, for example, I think it's time they have like a special transport system for perishables like, what do you call it, tomato, banana, plantain, even mango. There was a time even Dangote tried addressing it in the north, but it didn't work out well for him, where he now even went as far as establishing, I think if I remember well, mango processing factories. But let's even leave that. We need to come up with a unique transport system for this farm produce. Why? The time factor. Then storage. Electricity, I will not say is a problem, because even Tinubu has moved to solar, as in the federal government has moved to solar. So I would encourage that they start introducing green source storage systems, because the tomato has a particular temperature for which it can store for some weeks. unlike now that shelf life is just 3 to 5 days. So once we have storage systems that takes care of that, then automatically this volume of tomato that is being lost will be kept, and then the transportation, because that transportation system takes a longer time to attend to. Okay, because it takes a longer, it might take 1 or 2 years if you put full focus on it, and we'll have an effective transportation system. But while that is being attended to, the urgent one that can be done so fast is the storage system. So that even though it takes 2 to 3 days to move tomato from the farm across the country, then let's have a place where it can be stored, so that the first few that is carried out gets to where it's going to fresh, number one. Then number two, the others that are being that are waiting to be carried out as the next batch still stays fresh. So which is the storage should be addressed, and storage is now in line with electricity, because the tomato has to be kept cold at a certain temperature. But we now have the solar systems, and we have so many people coming up with silos for tomato, which government should now encourage on developing it to a more commercial level, and then it will help the farmers. So once that is done, then the market I just told you is the fresh produce, and the processed market is even more than 5 times this value. But how many tomato processing plants do we have? I don't even think we have anyone for making tin tomato.
We're talking about the processing.
Yes,
about the
we need to now repackaging them to
branding.
tin tomato, packaged tomato, tomato puree, tomato
Yeah.
sauce, dried tomato. There's tomato powder. So dried tomato, processed ones. Then even the tomato itself, there is how you can keep it dried. There is the processing of that. But there's the commercial scale is so small. Those are things that needs to be addressed. Once those ones are addressed urgently, that means instead of leaving my fresh tomato to go bad, I can process it to any of this. Just like they are doing for rice. You know, rice now, there are strategic locations for rice processing mills as done by the government across the country. We need to do that for virtually all the other products, which includes tomato in this case, because tomato, in fact, spreads more than rice. Because as a family, if we can't eat rice, we will eat eba. If we can't eat eba, we eat pounded yam, we eat amala. All these things require tomato and pepper.
I was about going there because it's a very essential ingredient. Because
yes,
if actually you're not preparing stew with tomato, you are actually spicing your meal with pepper.
yes.
So whether or not you like it, those who are the low-income earners are the first hit when
Yes.
it comes to some of these issues we just mentioned. So how do you think, while the government, they're playing their role in providing a very sustainable transport system, given the fact that the shelf life for these things are very, very limited and short, what do you think those in the financial sector can do to be able to enhance the supply value chain of this particular produce?
To enhance the supply chain is for them to support industry. That is processing factories sorry, let me one step back.
All right.
First of all is support the tomato production on a commercial level, not like now that about 70 to 80% of the farmers are peasant farmers.
True.
They grow the tomato for subsistence, that's all. Let them now look for people that they want to grow it as a business, and provide support for them in terms of land, produce, and production. So once that is done, the next stage is processing. So they should now look for how to get access to credit. I know government has has NISAL and support of some cooperative. So they need to now expand that, and then even the private sector too should now support such that I want to set up a tomato processing plant, either for tin tomato or tomato in plastic or tomato puree, or whichever form of tomato powder. There is a funding available, which is one at a reasonable rate. It's not that the funding is not there presently, but if I run a business where my margin is 40% and 30% is already going as loan payment, that means the business is brought in dead. It's dead on arrival. So that's the challenge. But if you are giving me a loan of considering the current economy, let's say somewhere between 15 to 20%, I have 20% extra to play around with, which will cover for my expenses and something left to keep the business alive. So it must be at a reasonable interest rate. In fact, the best should be single digits. So a single digit interest rate should be provided for industrialization of the tomato and pepper business. Pepper, the size of the pepper business is above 50% of the tomato business. So when you combine it, that's a huge income in terms of what do you call it, employment and empowerment of the people, which is what government is all about, employment and empowerment. But so if funding is available, that's good. Then I know government is now working on it. In the last I think 3 years or so, extension workers are not available to even educate farmers. Like this moth now that causes this damage, there are ways of planting that minimizes the occurrence. There are seeds, but you need extension workers to educate the farmers on this. But where are they? But I know there have been a lot of campaign recently, just I don't know now because it started and then it has suddenly gone quiet. So if they should now address that, the extension workers, to go to the peasant farmers and tell them, this is how you plant your tomato, this is how you deal with the soil. Because this tomato Ebola is in the north too. The southwest has their own. No?
Really?
That is really, yes, is it tomato wilt? That is similar to that, but this one now is a different way that is killing the tomato plants here in the southwest. That's why it's even not available too. So it's not just what's happening in the north, even here. So, but it's simple getting more extension workers, which means why are the extension workers not there? Number one, it's not a viable business anymore because they are paid less than minimum wage, and then most of them are not even well educated. So government needs to look at that part and make sure they are now more educated and more enlightened, and then their payment is more reasonable. Once that is there, they will be available to go to these farmers in their interland and tell them these are the practices that gives you 1, more yield, 2, more money, 3, constant production. So it minimizes these challenges, and those are the things that needs to be addressed urgently: transportation, storage, extension working.
Now, let's look at the report provided to us by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics as of 2024. You know, tomato demand increase rose to about 320%, followed by pepper, which gives us an idea as to looking at, you know, how government can be able to come in, you know, to be able to help to make this particular sector, when I'm talking about the horticulture sector, to bloom. Now, what do you think they can do, especially considering the fact that Nigeria, as it were, we are not producing to a level where we can say we are food sufficient, let alone export to sub-Saharan Africa. So what do you think we can do currently, both at the government level and also allowing private sector participation in this?
First of all, price of tomato rose by 300%, which made it seem as if there's a 320% rise.
Which made it seem as if.
Yes.
Can you explain that? It's a little bit technical.
A basket of tomato used to be in the range of 15 to 25,000 naira. 2023, 2024, it got started at 45,000 and then it closed at 150,000. Okay, so and when you check it at the holistic level, you will see that, oh, tomato used to be 1 billion, now it's 5 billion. So there's a 320% rise. It's the price that went up that made it seem as if it's a 320% rise. Yes, the market grows at an annual rate of about 2.5% actually, and Nigeria is the 11th largest producer of tomato in the world and the second largest in Africa. We do a lot of exports, but we just find it has been fresh tomato. It's time we start exporting processed tomato to get the real benefit. That's why we are not getting the real benefits. The real benefit is from when we start sending processed tomato out. That's
when there is a value addition.
Yes, when there's value addition, we will start make. So, which goes to your question. the country needs to urgently address industry for tomato.
Do we have any in this country?
There are a few, but the ones I know, they used to bring in a lot of tomato in puree form and then package it. Why? Because same problem, we are not producing enough, and then even getting it, the logistics of processing it from those locations makes it more expensive to use the local tomato than it's cheaper to import. So, which is why urgently the transport infrastructure has to be addressed. Then the general infrastructure, which is one, security, two, power. Which I'm saying, that's why the government needs to. What I expect them to do is a situation where you want to set up a tomato farm. We will provide storage. That there will now be storage, because like in Europe, there is guaranteed storage and there's guaranteed sales for some key products, which for them it is that staples that everybody eats. In Nigeria, tomato and pepper falls into that category, where you register your farm. For example, I'm doing I have an acre, I want to grow tomato. So as I'm growing tomato, 1 acre should give me 6 tons or 5 tons of tomato. I register that with the federal government. Federal government takes note, that gives them data, for example, and then now tells me that that's my tomato. I should go and sell it first, which means they will get information as to who I sold it to and how much. Once they have that information, government is sure of their tax, because once I tell them, I must pay that tax. 2, then 3, they now say any excess that you have not sold, bring it back to our storage facilities. We will pay you for it, which will now encourage more people to grow tomato, which is how it happens in Europe. And then, because they know any excess, it will not be wasted, number one. Then number 2, they are sure of the revenue. So then a commercial person can come and start producing tomato on a commercial level. And this is a simple policy statement, because the government does not even mean to be the one to build the storage. But if government is telling me build the storage and I'll give you the tomato, I will do it. But now they are not telling me that. And the average tomato farmer is not that literate to understand that come and store it and you pay me 20 naira per day per kilo of storing that tomato. I'd rather look for how to send it to the market.
So it comes down to the question I asked you. Even if government do not want to make that infrastructure possible, are there policy documents that they can put in place to be able to guarantee private sector who want to come into that space? Let there be an eco-friendly system.
They need to come up with
where
public-private
they can directly
documents.
deal with the peasant farmers. That's what I'm asking you.
For now, there is none that I'm aware of, but these are the things that government needs to urgently, that's where I'm going to, they need to urgently address. That they look at the entire tomato, pepper, or even the agric value chain and start setting up policy statements that would encourage private people to participate.
That brings us to the question of what is the Bola Ahmed Tinubu policy document when he came into office, especially catering to these needs?
In the agric value chain, there was no strong one. It was based on working on what is already in existence. And I tell you, there is a lot currently in existence that has not even been tapped into. All these things already exist. It's just left for the minister to start setting up policy statements along the value chain that, so we need private individuals to build storage facilities for tomato. This is what's in it for them. We need people to start. Extension is government, but nothing stops private people from offering. That is going to stop government from outsourcing extension services. Nothing stops government from outsourcing it, which will now guarantee extension. Then credit. I told you, for farming requires what they call patient capital.
How do you
patient capital is capital that runs for a long time. Capital that, instead of you, short-term capital is hot capital, is hot money. Money that in 12 months it must come out or the business dies. But agric, you don't need 12 months money. You need a minimum of 5 years money, which is patient capital. And patient capital that is 5 years money is single-digit interest rate. Because look at it, the current bank interest is between 25 and 35%. 25% over 4 years means it's 100%. The business has died. But a 9% loan over 4 years is about 30%, which is reasonable. The farmer can survive. So those are the things the government now needs to address. Single-digit loans for these farmers, access to credit, enlightenment of the advantage of taking this credit and how to use it effectively and how to run your farm as a business. Now, the average peasant farmer runs the farm not as a business, but as a source of family upkeep. There's a difference between keeping money for family upkeep and keeping money for keeping a business.
So in other words, you're saying that at that level, they are not running it as a going concern.
No, they are running it that I have 20 children.
Just to put food on the table.
This farm puts food on the table, and then when I die, my children takes over, which is why they need to have plenty children too, so that they all keep the farm going. If I want to expand the farm, I marry more wives and get more children, so that I can now put more people on the farm, not knowing that all you need is a tractor.
So you were talking a while ago off camera about upskill, because sometimes when you talk to some persons about scaling up their business a notch further, it tends to blow their mind away. So how do you make this picture something that is so glaring that they can see their future in it?
Which I answered you when you asked. Demand pool is what they call it. The guy, the farmer can't see it because he's telling him that his farm of 10 million can be worth 100 million. You are giving him headache, and it's the headache that does not have Panadol. So he will now see you as the enemy and not a friend. But when you come and say your farm is 10 million, I need 15 million from you on this farm, he will start thinking of how to expand and give you that amount. And you keep upping it. From 15 million, I need 25 million. And slowly over a 3-4 year period, you get to 100 million. He will not realize because he has been busy trying to catch up. You get? Because then, as I'm trying to make him produce more and give me more, he'll be thinking, and I'll say, you know what? Don't worry. This is your family. You don't need to marry more wives. You don't need to have more children. Musa over there has a tractor. If he brings the tractor, he can double the capacity of your farm to even 25 million instead of the 15 million I need. What do you think? And it costs you nothing. Remember, that's the issue, is also the price. And the farmer now thinks, oh, that's a good idea. And then tractor comes in. But if not, he doesn't need your tractor. He has enough children and wives to work on the farm. And then the other workers he has, the casual workers, they are underpaid. So those ones too, which is the other challenge in our Greek system, casual workers have started moving. That's the urban drift. Why? Because they are paid far less than the minimum wage. And all the simple solution to this is by creating a system where casual workers are paid, and the only way to do that is increase the revenue of the farmer. He's paying below minimum wage peasant money to peasant workers because even his farm is a peasant farm. Wow. Do you get it? But if you increase his revenue, he can now make more money and pay the workers ideal pay, and then the workers will stay. So yes, there is a mindset thing. They have a problem expanding because they see that I don't need 100, because that's how they think. All I need is money to feed my family, send my children to school, and live a good life. 10 million sales a year is fine. But I'm not telling him, give me 100 million. He won't. Expand your farm to 100 million. He will not. But when I now tell you, I need 100 million worth of tomato from you, it's different. It's a different narrative.
That's a beautiful way to leave the conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Ayo Emakilme, for coming on the show. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's been very informative, I must tell you. And of course, thank you so much for watching.